Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, everyone, and welcome to episode 13 of Tuesday Talks and Tips. Now, please note that Toastmasters International and all other Toastmasters International trademarks and copyrights are the sole property of Toastmasters International, and this podcast or webinar series is independent of Toastmasters International. It is not authorized by, endorsed by, sponsored by, affiliated with, or otherwise approved by Toastmasters International, other than for the use of the name Toastmasters International. There. Now, let me, since we are on housekeeping, let me mention that this video or this session is being recorded, and the video will be posted on YouTube and shared to all Toastmasters or whoever is interested. Tonight, we have three Toastmasters who will be sharing their own perspective, their own knowledge based on their own research of the new Basecamp updates. And let me introduce them all, or in terms of a brief introduction of their credentials. But then after I introduce all three of them, we will start with George Marshall, followed by Roger Fung, and then Carole McCulloch. So let me introduce first George, who is probably not a stranger to many of you. George Marshall, Distinguished Toastmaster, was one of the first ambassadors in District 57. As Chief Pathways Guide for District 57 in Northern California, he led the very first pilot launch of Pathways in early 2017, then led the project to introduce Pathways to the undistricted clubs. He earned the first Pathways DTM in his district and was awarded a presidential citation for his efforts with Pathways. He has been with Toastmasters for 16 years, has completed 3 paths, and is working on 3 more paths currently. And during this hour, he will be focusing on an overview or a summary of the key changes or updates to Basecamp. Our second presenter will be Roger Fung. Roger Fung began his Toastmasters journey in 2017. He was a pathways guide for his local district, that is District 50, when Pathways was launched in February 2018. In November 2018, Roger became the first Pathways DTM in District 50, completing the presentation mastery and strategic relationships. He is currently working on engaging humor and leadership paths. Our third presenter will be Carole McCulloch. Now, if you see my eyes scanning, I am frantically trying to find the blurb that she sent, not seeing it, and feeling comfortable that I know Carole enough to introduce her. Carole is one of the pioneers in District 73. She is currently District 73 Pathways Coordinator. She is also a member of District 70, I believe. She has created a website or a Google site which focuses on different aspects of pathways. She is an instructional um,
Designer.
person, designer, there's the word, and she brings that lens to everything she does on pathways. Her passion is mentoring in the pathways program, and I cannot remember how many paths she's done, but she's definitely way out there. And so there, I hope I have done justice to your credentials, Carole. At this point, let me now welcome our, oh, before I welcome George though, let me say that we are going to have a short presentation by each of our presenters, followed by a Q&A. It will be about 5 to 7 minutes presentation and then Q&A of about the same time. If you have questions, you can post them on the chat and we will see if we can address them as expeditiously as possible. So if you are during the presentation, please mute yourselves so that we can focus on the presentations. At this point, let us all welcome George Marshall.
Hello, everyone, whatever time of day and day of the week it might happen to be. We, as Michelle was already telling you, have some really new things going on in Pathways. And these are some features that members have been asking for ever since we began the program. So what I'm going to do is to go through the basics, the facts, and then as Michelle said, my colleagues are going to talk about some other aspects of the program. So let's get started. Do you see my slides?
Yes, we do.
Yeah, we're all muted, so you couldn't talk, right? Okay. There's a couple of really big features, and then there's some things that relate to that and make it work. Here we go. What's new in Pathways? And this is less than 2 weeks, so this is very, very new information. For the first starters, you can view all the projects in your path, any level. This is as compared to the scheme we've had since the day of launch in 2017, where you could see brief summaries of all of your projects, but could only see details on the project within the level you're currently working on. So this is fantastic. This is really big. What it means is that people can research and plan. We have members that like to be planning 2, 3, 4 projects out for what they want to do. And it was frustrating to not be able to see those details. Now they can. And again, it also means that if you just finish up the project in one level and submitted it, then you can go ahead now and prepare for project the next level because you have been able to see them all along. You didn't have to wait until your Vice President Education approved them. So this is really, really big news. It shows that headquarters really took into account what we've asked for and dealt with it. Another new feature is you can start the next level immediately. Remember, in our current scheme up to now, you would complete the last path project in your level. You would submit it for approval by a base camp manager, usually your VPE. Some of them were very good and very fast at getting back to you. Others were a little challenged or took a while. And so a member could wait, getting frustrated for the VPE to approve it. No longer. You can go on to the projects in the next level immediately. So that says the level approval is not required to start the next level. And you don't have to wait at all. More specifically, you can even do projects and levels out of order. You remember on the traditional program, while it was recommended that we do projects in order in a manual, you could always do out of order and it was no problem. We now have the same facility in base camp. So what about this in order stuff? Let's take a closer look at that. So we said projects and levels can be done out of order. You can be working on one level, 2, level 3, and then suddenly decide to do another one. Now, again, I would recommend that members follow the sequence of projects and levels normally, new members especially, but this is designed to allow more experienced members that know what they need to do projects they need to. In other words, the member can decide. The member may ask the VPE for some advice and help on it, but essentially it is just like the traditional program. The member is back in control on the order that they do the projects in. Now, how does that actually work? Let's take a look at that. A member could choose to just pick one random project up. For example, maybe you're working on level 2 and you've got a speaking opportunity coming up that would be a perfect fit for one of those level 3 electives. The member can go do that one. Or if for some reason, the member might do a complete level out of order. Again, it's up to the member. They might ask the advice of the VPE. VPE probably will encourage newer members to stick kind of close to the program, but there can be reasons why a member would want to do a specific project or level out of order, and they can do it. Now, as far as how it actually operates, the VPE can approve an out of order level. Let's say, for example, that Roger chooses to go do the entire level 3 set of projects after doing level 1, and he can submit that for approval by the VPE. The VPE can, the request will go in. The VPE can, in fact, approve that level out of order. However, awards, the level 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 awards, do still need to be submitted in order by level. So you can work them all out of order, but when you actually come time to apply for the awards, they will need to be done in order for the awards, okay? Now there's something special about the level 5 now. Now, if we can do levels out of order, that means that someone could complete level 5 before they completed all the rest of them, couldn't they? So completing level 5 no longer indicates the completion of the entire path. For most people in most sequences, yes, probably, but it might not, so we have to allow for that. So the Reflect on Your Path project, which is always required to be the very last project you do in level 5, has now been moved to a new section, a path completion section. We won't call it a level because this is the only thing in it. But you only get access to this until you've completed the other levels, or it appears until you've nearly completed all the levels. That's not quite clear yet. Now, some of you are going to go back to your club with this and they're going to say, great, but that's just what George said. Is that really true? Yes. And here's the documentation you need. I urge you to study it and to share it with other members of your club. In the Pathways Frequently Asked Questions, they've added about 6 or 7 or 8 new items that address these specific issues. Now, you can copy down this URL if you want to, but honestly, all you have to do is go to the Toastmaster website and in the little search box, search on the Pathways Frequently Asked Questions, and it will bring this one up. And there you can see confirmation and even more details about each one of the points that I made. What's the net effect? For you and the members of your club, it now means that the members have more choices and more flexibility on how they work the program. They were able to customize it even more to their own needs and desires than ever before. So at this time, I'll stop and I'll take any questions that might have come up. And Michelle, I'll let you moderate the questions and so forth here.
Certainly. And while waiting for questions, perhaps I would like to add that we tested the Basecamp, well, at least I checked into Basecamp, and the Complete Your Path or complete level completion, that 6th item does appear. I didn't really click on it and try to complete it, but you can see it even if you have not yet started on a path.
Yes, and Roger and I, being the techies that we are, actually went and tested a number of aspects of this just to see if it could be done, and it can all be done. It really can. I have a very, very friendly VP of Education, and I told her, this is what I'm going to do. I need to see if I can complete that project. Trust me, I'll do the projects. And she verifies I can do
it. That's what I like about the boys' approach. They try to break it.
Now.
Well, I'll say this. George is the one who tries to figure things out. I'm the one who tries to break the system. So let's let George get off that reputation.
All right.
Okay.
And I see Roger has posted that actual URL, so you can check on that at your leisure. Any questions right now, or shall we move on?
Yeah, I don't see any questions at this point. So maybe you can field a question which your club, because I know that you have talked with your club about this. You have presented something similar, George. How about raising or fielding the questions that you experienced or you got from your club mates?
The first one was they just wanted to be sure they really understood it. Some of our officers are real sticklers for following by the book. And so they really wanted to be sure that it worked the way I said it did, and they were happy that we were still recommending that you follow the sequence. But I showed them the frequently asked questions, and of course, I think all base camp managers got an email from Toastmasters about 10 days ago that had the essence of this on it. So that was the main thing. Mostly what I saw was big smiles.
I can imagine, because like you said, it's almost too good to be true. We had just been asking to be able to look ahead. Well, most people were just asking to be able to look ahead. And then they opened it up. Not only can you look ahead, you can actually work on the project. So that was quite a surprise for some. And personally, I really had to stop myself from going, nye, 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 because I keep on hearing people saying, oh, nobody's listening in World Headquarters, and there you are.
I speak regularly to the head of the director of IT, Sam Farigian, and I took him to task at the last convention and said, he's not getting credit for all the good stuff he's done. He's not talking enough about all the work they're doing. So we'll see if it does any good, but they are doing some good work for us, even if they seem to like to keep it to themselves until it's all done.
Yeah. So are there any questions? If not questions, maybe clarifications or concerns, or maybe just a big whoopee. Okay.
Well, for me, it was the big whoopee. I have been waiting for this for some long time, and now I can be very happy to say you can now plan ahead. Thank you, World Headquarters, or the Summit team, we should be saying.
Yeah. Okay. So perhaps we can move on to Roger, and then we'll have a break again for questions after Roger's presentation.
Thank you, Michelle. I want to follow up on a couple of points that both George and Carole have mentioned. Number one, like any changes, you will find that there is a group that really welcomes it, and there will be another group that hates it. So one of the goals of this is to clearly delineate what is happening first, mechanically, what are the steps, and then we might have a couple of suggestions as to how you can manage it. Of course, you have to tailor this to your specific situation and your club to fit their needs. Number two, in terms of sending a lot of changes, and I'm to headquarters, continue to do so, but do also note that there is a huge amount of members who are not in North America or some of the more advanced countries where we are used to doing X, Y, or Z. So whatever decision they have to make, it has to apply to at least a good chunk technologically or mechanically. With that said, let me just dive right into the presentation. This is going to reiterate a number of things that George have mentioned, just to make sure that we are all on the same page in this regard. As you can see, that the level completion approval is that clubs are recommended to have some kind of record, a chart, spreadsheet, websites, whether it be FreeToast or EasySpeak or whatever site that you guys are using to track members' progress. With Basecamp Manager, when Basecamp managers receive the email notification for level completion approval request, they should confirm that the members have completed all the projects in the levels. Once confirmed, BCM can approve the request, notify the members of their approval, and confirm the members' desire on how and when to apply these education awards. For example, they might be multi-club members, or they may have already given a level 1 to a club and they want to reserve another level 1 to another time, so on and so forth. Make sure that there is clear communication. And here's the warning: do not process Club Central Education Awards prior to members' confirmation. Education Awards. Members can work on projects and levels out of sequence in Basecamp. For example, finish the icebreaker, jump over and worked on and complete a level 4 project, then jump and go back to level 2 project. However, in Education Awards must be submitted in sequence in Club Central. 1, then 2, then 3, then 4, then 5. When a member has completed a higher level out of sequence, they must wait until prior levels to be completed before Education Awards can be submitted in Club Central. The limit is in Club Central, not in Basecamp. Confirming level completion in Basecamp. What you do is log in to Basecamp as a Basecamp manager. In the search box, enter the member's name. You go into that member's profile and click on transcript. You will find the appropriate path and click on open curriculum. Completed levels will be marked accordingly. This is an example. When the Basecamp manager log in and look at my profile, motivational strategy, which was purchased less than 8 hours ago. I did not finish all these projects. Like I said, do this to break the system. Icebreaker was completed. You see level 1, it says 25%. Then I jump over to level 4 and completed all of the, or at least complete all of the required projects and one elective, made the request. The BCM approved it. As you can see right here on the left side, you got level 4 checked, but not the rest. Because, well, let me continue. Well, just mentioned, Roger have finished, completed the icebreaker project, jumped to level 4, completed everything. BCM approved the request. Roger's Education Award for level 4 cannot be submitted yet. Must finish 1, 2, and 3 first. This is what it looks like. On the left side in Basecamp, you saw earlier, 21%, level 4 was checked. On the right side, here is a screen share of my profile in Club Central. Click on Awards, and you will see Online Motivational Strategy Level 1. Basecamp is still sequentially one after another. One potential problem is that if the BCM or officers receive a note that Roger had finished level 4, goes into Club Central, and look, oh, motivational strategy, level 1. We must have forgotten to give him level 1, 2, 3, so why don't I just go ahead and give it to him now? That is one of the issues that potentially that this change can produce. Therefore, we are recommending that the BCM/officers make sure that they double check in Basecamp over here on this left side that level 4 is the only level that been completed. Therefore, for this individual in Club Central, we have to wait. So the recommendation is that members are strongly encouraged to get back into unfinished projects in prior level. If there's that one project in level 4 or 5 that you really like or a member really like, go ahead and do it. I encourage them to go back as soon as they can. Of course, if they're more advanced, they know exactly what they want to do, that is perfectly fine. Members are responsible for navigating through their learning paths in whichever order they desire. This could potentially be a problem. On the other hand, it also reminds us to communicate with one another. A novel thought in Toastmaster. So this is the frequently asked questions. Link again is already in the chat box. And now, if you have any questions, I'll open up our time.
feel free to unmute yourself
Yep, if you have
any
questions, unmute yourself.
Or if you don't know how to unmute yourself, just wave. I can see, I'm on gallery view, so I can see you. Just wave, and I will unmute you. And I think Jing has unmuted herself. Jing, do you have a question? Yes.
Can you guys hear me?
Yes.
Can you guys hear me?
Loud and
Yes.
clear.
So it wasn't a question, but more of a comment. I like the idea that people can jump around and finish levels. And I also like the idea that it can't be submitted into Club Central out of sequence, because I'm thinking of the Distinguished Club Program requirements, and you need like 4 level 1s, you know, so many level 2, so many level 3, some level 4s. And I feel like if you could submit to Club Central just that level 4 in that example that Roger showed, you don't really have to finish 1, 2, and 3. And, you know, people might use that for the wrong reason. So right now I'm on board with not submitting it to Club Central until you're finished with the level as it should be, but at least it allows the member to really customize the project, because as both of them have said, you may have a reason for jumping to another level because of the type of project that is required there, and now may be the time for you to do it because of whatever's going on that you're working on. But you still have to complete the other levels. Does anybody else have an opinion on, you know, whether or not members will be pushing for whatever level is completed to be able to be submitted to Club Central?
Let's do a quick vote by hand. Jin just mentioned we have at least 2 potential, right? Number 1 is the default. The default right now is that while in Basecamp, you can jump back and forth, but in Club Central, there is a limit. You have to go submit 1 level at a time. Should we stay with that, or free for all, any level, once you complete it, we can mark it in Club Central? Those of you who love free for all, please raise your hand, or at least turn on your video so we can see your hand raised. Or you can type it in the chat box. Anyone? No hands. Well, let's see a show of hands to keep things as is in Club Central and approve level by level. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Okay, double hands, triple hands. Double hands, all right. So that's the general census, Jin, in terms of this crowd.
Yeah, and a few raised their hands on the, you know, on the chat, or
that's right.
Yeah.
We
on
are
the chat
all
box.
in agreement. I love it. Thank you.
Yeah. Here's the thing. We have at least 3 groups of people. Number 1, there are those who says, hey, I just started. Let me just go 1 step at a time. And they'll continue on level. We have a second group that says, I love to look at the whole thing first. So now they can have that option to look at everything. And after they look, just like in the college catalog, oh, I know what this electrical engineering degree is going to look like. Well, I still go back and take my Math 101 and 201 and so on and so forth. Then you have another group that says, hey, I love to be able to jump back and forth and do projects that are fitting exactly the timing of what I'm doing at work, at church, and nonprofits, and so on and so forth. And the smallest possibility are those who not only jump around, but complete a whole advanced level before they go back. Because they tend to be jumping to specific projects that they fit in, not necessarily the whole. But either way, as long as our VPE are clear and our officers are clear, then we're fine. It's just now that the option is open, there's a potential for abuse or potential for mistakes, but as long as you are clear that what we're doing in Basecamp is separate from what we're doing in Club Central, we're good.
I agree.
Any questions, concerns? If not, we can dive right into our third presenters, Carole.
Yeah, my question really is to everyone, why would you want to do this? And that is the premise for which I'm going to launch into my little presentation here today. It's answering the question of why and also what. What choices might you make ahead of time? For me as an instructional designer, I love this new user choice because that's what we want in online education these days. That's what we're used to. We want to be able to make those choices. So I'm going to share my screen. I have some slides as well for you. Bear with me while we go to those. So what we're really doing is leaping ahead and making sure that we have that user choice clearly in our minds. Let me just move some of my pieces around on the screen here. So this is to answer the why question and what might you do when you do leap ahead. So if we're looking for that flexibility that both Roger and George have given us today, then what we might be doing is exactly like the way in which Roger gave us an example. He might have finished level 1, but he wants to leap to directly across to level 4 because there's a project there that he does want to do. It's really going to be very timely for him to do it because of what he's doing in his workplace or what he might be doing in Toastmasters in general. And once that's finished, he can then resume back a level if he so chooses. The user choice is the important aspect of this. And what I'm picking up on today is an elective as a possible selection that you might make at level 4 as a way of demonstrating why it will be useful for you to leap. So let's imagine that you are getting ready to do presentations online. Maybe this project, which is an elective, is the very one that you need right now. Maybe you have to do them at work. So at level 4, you get an option of doing the elective called Manage Online Meetings. Is there anyone in the audience who has done this particular project?
Yeah.
You've actually, I know that a number of us here have actually done the work many, many, many times over, but some are new to it. And if you're a new club executive, you might be wanting to learn how to manage an online meeting for your executive meetings. So this is an ideal project and an ideal way for leaping ahead. So in this particular project, you are managing or learning how to manage online with some of the materials that are presented to you inside that project. And I always suggest to people to go directly to the second last page of your online class and pick up your Print My Project, store away your PDF so that you can go back to it without having to be online. And in this particular one, you've got the ability to pick up your evaluation resource at the same time and a couple of very useful documents that you can use in the project itself. The agenda for your online meeting and some clues about your online meeting basics. And these are very important, especially in this project, so you can then download them, do your research, learn about it online, preview the videos in this project, which are excellent, and then of course later come back to complete your assess the skills after. For me, I have to keep reminding myself, have I done that? Have I gone back? Have I gone back in to complete the assess your skills after? And if you're looking to complete a level, it will be fairly obvious when your VPE or other Basecamp manager can't find it. That's the question they'll ask of you. Make sure you come back to it. So completing the online learning in this particular project is very valuable for your executive team because they'll actually watch a video which points out all of the things you need to do to prepare for that online meeting. And by the way, this one is a 25 to 30-minute presentation, if you like, or facilitation online in an actual meeting. It's not a speech. You don't do it at the club. you do it online because that's the nature of the product. And as you continue your online learning, you will also be able to look through what it is you do in the project. You know, what your role is as the facilitator in this online meeting. So it's an excellent example for why you might leap ahead. And I'm really happy to say that. I'm going to say to many of my executives now, if you want to run your executive meetings, try this one first, try this project, learn about it first, then go ahead and get your own copy of Zoom and go ahead and run your meeting. I think it's the way forward. In this particular one, the evaluation criteria is different. So being able to see what that is right up front as you're leaping forward, you want to be able to make sure that it's of the right interest for your audience, that you are managing the technology correctly, and that your organisation of the meeting is done in the way in which the learning has helped you to do. So these parts are no different to what you will be doing in other projects, but in this case, you've only just finished maybe levels 1 and 2, and you're now being given the task of being on a committee that runs the online meeting. So this is the why for me. I really like being able to leap ahead. Now, knowing what's coming up is an important feature as well. So I'm also advocating that you have a look at your project details from within your transcript, because you can now activate and launch any of those new projects from here. So that will give you a bit of a heads up as to what's available and what you really want to do in the short term before you've finished a particular level. So I'm really keen to have people start doing this. And then I started thinking about, all right, we may need to track back now and have a look at some of the other things that we've got in other paths that we've completed. So going back in to your transcript and looking through those completed ones, opening up your curriculum and having a look at others in there will be a very useful process, because you've got access to all of the electives in the paths that you've already done. And so you can view your details and choose accordingly. So this is one of mine in strategic relationships. And the one that I think would be really useful for people to do ahead of time, if they can, is lead in your volunteer organisation. So important. In this particular project, you can, of course, launch it from here and do it out of sequence if necessary. This is a really good project for your club leaders. You can now advocate that they choose that one. So leading in your volunteer organisation at level 5, you can have a go at right now. You might also be thinking about other projects that are at level 5 that will be very useful for you in your role as a club executive. Now you can have a look at those, and not just the little script that tells you what you do, but the whole project, which is most important. And one of those that I looked at recently, this one about lead in your organisation, this one, actually looking ahead and looking at the way in which 360-degree evaluations are done is really, really super to do ahead of time. So you can take on board this task of being in the club executive team and not do your final speech until the end. But in the meantime, you are knowing how to work through that particular project. So I'm really, really in favour of you leaping now and trying other projects. And I think that's the end of the slides that I have for today, because I've got a whole set of them here that I'm using for my delivery. So I will now come out of sharing and come back to the audience and to see if generated any other thoughts in your head about what you might want to do. Are there any questions, please?
Thank you so much, Carole. While others are still framing their questions or clarifications, I just wanted to say another project is the HPL, because people, they worry about the HPL and then they see it and it holds them up. So now you can take a look at the HPL wherever you are at level 1, level 2, knowing that the HPL is in level 5, but start working on it, start planning on it. And because it takes so much more time, you'll probably be getting close to level 5 by the time you complete it. It depends on what your HPL would be. And of course, we know that there are 3 paths that there is a required HPL: effective coaching, innovative planning, and persuasive influence. So that would really help people work a little bit what the engineers would call the PERT CPM, where they would have the critical path. The HPL would be that, perhaps. And I am looking at anyone who has unmuted themselves. I'm not seeing anybody. Oh, there's a chat.
There was a question from Steve about how do you view where to go in pathways to view the entire path curriculum at once. And so the answer there is to view it by clicking on the logo for the path on the left-hand side when you go in.
Carole, could you show that? Is your speed, your live speed? Do you think you could do that so people could?
Okay, just bear with me once.
Sorry to put you on the spot.
While Carole is searching for that page, let me share something very quickly in terms of why you would do it. Here is just a list of some of the electives in level 3 where you can build a social media presence, create podcasts, and so on and so forth. Now that this is open, here's one potential idea where you can use this apply to your club at one time, or your church, your nonprofit. What if you have one person who would take care of the social media presence, another person focusing on the podcast, another third person going on compelling blog, and a fourth person on public relations strategy, each working on one individual project, but the content is the same thing in promoting that one club or PTA or whatever. So that is one thing that you could do when all 4 individuals may be at different places in their level. Now they can come together, maybe let's say for a month, work on a common project, and they will splinter back out to go back to whatever level that they have. So that's one example of how to use this new ability to jump back and forth.
Yes, and not doing the work just for the sake of the work, but actually using the projects to help the club, in real projects, real help for the club. And by the way, Carole, sorry to have you scrambling, but Steve has answered that he found it, just I guess based on what you said. He clicked on the curriculum and he has found how to get in and see all of the projects.
Well, that's good to know, because my system suddenly slowed down and I wasn't able to get in as quickly as I possibly could. But yes, the idea is that you click on the logo for the path on the left-hand side and you can see everything there for you laid out.
Great. So is there any other question, clarification? Just unmute yourself.
I was going to ask Roger, how do you get time to do all this stuff? I mean, maybe you could do a time management or seminars.
I don't have a life.
Okay.
Well, I think this is something that is, each and every one of us are motivated by different things. I think you can probably guess people like Michelle and Carole and George, who are more on the coaches, helping, assisting, that kind. This is in their blood. where something pops up and we have this new update, and very quickly a message is sent out. Number 3, 4, 5 people jump right on and says, okay, I found this part and I found that part. And then the next question is that all we need, or do we need to provide this to the greater audience? And that's how we got to this point. So I think a long way of answering your question is more of what is it that we're really trying to do? And with that, as we look at it, sometimes we spot something that says, hey, this is a great jackpot. Let me share it with Michelle because I know she's thinking about X. Or maybe this is a pothole, and let me share it with Carole because she's been thinking of that. So I think that's more in that regard. And just like what Michelle said earlier, none of this is extra, at least from my perspective, it's not extra work for me because this is part of my life in terms of how I'm going to pick these things, delineate the issue very quickly, and come up with a strategy to deal with it, because that's what I do as a consultant on a daily basis. So that is part of my answer to you, Mary.
Thank you very much, Roger. And I am seeing a comment or a suggestion from Steve. Here's a topic for a future broadcast. How have leaders facilitated conversion from the traditional program to pathways? And he added some vintage members are adverse to making the change. Well, actually, Steve, episode 4, is it 4? No, episode 5, I believe. Episode 5, where Trish Blackwelder, and I believe Trish is here right now. Trish is a very experienced Toastmaster, and she is the District 3. Correct me, Trish, if I'm wrong there. She's the District 3 lead pathways or pathways chair. She did a session, an episode, I believe it was episode 5. After I answer this, I'll find the YouTube link and post it in the chat. But that was covered, Steve. Still, nonetheless, I agree there would still be a need for that. We might just do a rerun or a live remake. We might do a remake of that episode because I believe that's one of the most popular ones. Yes, Roger.
Here's one thing that this new update helps you also, is that instead of selling Pathway as a whole, understand those individual members, what's that one thing that they're really going after? And then you look at the list of all the projects that's potentially there. Maybe that person really have this question about, oh, what's all this social media means? All right, forget selling Pathway. Let me open up that PDF and help that one member on that one issue. And if he or she takes a bite on that project and whet their appetite, guess what? I've got a whole lot more projects to show you too. So that's one way this new update have allowed us to do.
Thank you, Roger. That is exactly what I would have said. I think that will bring in others who have turned themselves away because they can't see the gems that are hidden there. And being able to see them ahead of time is really what it's all about, because you can then make an informed choice. It wasn't enough for me to see just that brief summary inside the catalogue. I needed more. I wanted to see the whole thing, and now I can. I can then make a more informed choice as to whether it's right for me right now.
Now, don't ask them to marry you the first date. Just take them on that first date and then lead them to that second date. So don't sell on Pathway as a whole if they have an issue. Sell it project by project. Sooner or later, they'll get it.
Wait a minute. Can you see other people's things like paths that you haven't signed up for? Because how would you point that out to them if you don't see what's in there?
Couple of options. Number one, if you have, let's suppose the individual have not signed on to Pathway at all, have not chosen a path whatsoever, you can look at one of your path. And you may not have all the projects, but at least look at some of the projects that you have available. Now you can put, let's say you're on level 1 only or level 2, but there's a project in level 4. Well, you can now open up that project, download that PDF as Carole have showed you earlier. Now you can show it to them in PDF in terms of, hey, if you sign up with this path that has this project, guess what? Down the road, you can have this. This is something that you can work on.
Yes, that's a great point. Carole or George, would you like to add any other points to that? How would you communicate with vintage members on, with these new changes or these updates to pathways?
To me, I
Yeah,
view it as a
I
selling.
agree. Sorry, George, go ahead.
Honestly, I view this as selling. You have to sell the program. Some of our members, and by the way, they aren't all vintage, I might point out. Some of them are a lot younger than me. Some of them just like what they were doing. And so, as Roger said, you can't say, isn't this whole program wonderful? You may need to use an example. So let me show you a specific reason, a specific thing you might do. That's not guaranteed to work, but you think about two ways. Is wouldn't it be nice if everyone enthusiastically switched over right now? Well, I guess headquarters staff would love that. Some people are going to switch when June 2020 rolls around. And I've talked to a number of people that say, I'm going to quit rather than do this. And honestly, I don't think they will, because there's so much more to Toastmasters than the pages we read to do our projects. Our clubs, our district, our colleagues, the friends we make, the support we get. There's so much more of that. And those things don't change with Pathways. They just don't change. Pathways basically is a different way of reading your project and an update of the projects. Both those okay. And these latest changes just threw away many of the objections about the awkwardness of getting at the projects that wasn't there before. So it's always gonna be a challenge to show someone that's got one point of view, a different way of thinking about it. But we've got more tools now to do it with.
I agree with that, George, wholeheartedly. I think we've now got the ability to say to someone, have you thought about doing this project? Now have a look at it in its entirety so that you can see what's involved. When I had a look at what it was all about with the project on blogging, I was sold. I wanted to do that immediately. And many people do. They're looking for a project that fits what they are doing at this point in time. So now being able to leap ahead and choose something that is going to be relevant to them at this point in time is a selling feature. And you're just pointing out that this is a little bit like when you were searching before for your advanced projects, which ones to do, you could have a look at all of the projects in PDF format and you could see what they were and make a choice in a more informed manner. So I'm very keen to say to people, have a look at what's available. You could do podcasting. You could do some digital storytelling. You could do a whole heap of things that are relevant to you in this time and utilize that project to help you with it. So I'm all in favor of the leaping ahead.
Okay, wonderful. We have right now, and I cannot believe where the time went, but as they always say, time flies when we're having fun. We have our last 6 minutes. Roger, I see you have your hand up. If you can make your point very briefly, because then I would like to have a wrap-up statement from each of the three of you.
30 seconds. Piggyback on what George and Carole had just mentioned. Right now with this, you can potentially create 15, 20, 30 different testimonial videos to promote your club and focus on that one project you just completed that you just love and knock it out of the park. And you don't have to do a general comment about your testimonial about Toastmasters. That is good. But now you can also say, hey, I just completed this podcasting project and this is what I've learned X, Y, and Z, why this is so important to me. This could be done not only to convince those who are in our club to get into Pathway, but also could be a marketing vehicle to non-Toastmaster as to, oh, there's another snippet of what Val have done, what George have done, what Mary have done, and Trish have done. You can have a whole series of that. Back to you, Michelle.
Yes, I was about to hold up my timer. Thank you so much. So unless there is a burning question from anyone in the audience, and if so, please quickly unmute yourself and briefly state your question. Going. Okay, so not hearing anything, I would like now to request George, followed by Roger, and then Carole, to do your brief summation or call to action or insight or anything that you want to say, maximum of 1 minute, please. Start
Thank
with
you,
you, George.
Michelle. I'm going to do my follow-up on the last point we talked about, which is persuading members comfortable with the old program to try a new one. With the changes that let people pick whatever project they want to do, pathways can now be dealt with much like the traditional program. If you don't like leadership, do the presentation mastery and engaging humor paths. You can do it almost like the old CC. I have a dozen CCs and I skipped all over the place. I did CC projects to match what I want to talk about. You can now do exactly and precisely the same thing in pathways with those two paths, and that can be the beginning of learning to love everything there is about pathways. Over to you, Roger.
One summary in terms of being a Basecamp manager / officer, just make sure that how you manage Basecamp and how you handle Club Central are two distinct, separate functions. Carole.
Thank you, guys. I'm just putting a link into the chat pod there for you. In answer to the question, where can everyone see the recordings of these sessions? I'm putting those together in a Google site, and you can find those there at the link. And as soon as this one has been finalized by Michelle, we will add those as well. So it's always useful to have a look at what else we are doing behind the scenes. Thank you so much for your interest in this. I'm really excited about the change, and I want you to tell your members about the change and what it will mean for them. Back to you, Michelle.
Thank you so much. Thank you. So we actually have more than one option of seeing all the past episodes. Hopefully you're seeing my screen right now. If you go to YouTube and just type hashtag Tuesday Talks and Tips, no spaces, hashtag Tuesday Talks and Tips, and of course hit the search button or the search thing, then you will see all the Tuesday Talks and Tips. We have currently 12. This is the 13th. Or if you wish, the Google site that Carole mentioned. And now, as an advance announcement for next week, and how cool is that we have 2 of the 3 presenters next week. Next week, we are having a special learning session where we will see how to use the Free Toast Host, Easy Speak, and Late Breaker, the third WordPress for Toastmasters. So we will also have David Carr presenting. Our presenter for Easy Speak will be none other than Carole. You've heard her today. Our presenter for Free Toast Host will be Lori, whom many of you have heard. And as I mentioned, WordPress for Toastmasters will be David Carr, who created WordPress for Toastmasters. So that is going to be another powerhouse learning session where people will have a better understanding of the tools for pathways in each of these 3 club management websites. So at this point, I will end the recording, and